Hello, I'm Odin, and this time I'm going to make what is quite possibly my most requested prop, the Aperture Science Portal Gun. I've made a portal gun before on DIY Prop Shop, but that was from Rick and Morty. This time, I'm going to make the Aperture Science handheld portal device. To start, I want to make the white housing of the device. My original plan was to carve the shapes from a styrofoam block and then pull a pattern. But the guys at Smosh allowed me to borrow their portal gun replica toy, and I thought I'd just pull a pattern from that and save myself a step. The pattern technique I'm using is what Evil Ted Smith shows us in his videos. And if you want to know more about how to make these patterns, please check out his channel. I cut the rear shell into 3 sections because I want the pattern pieces to lay flat, and the front shell is cut into 2 sections. I only need to make pattern pieces for one side because I can flip them over and make all the parts symmetrical. And I add little guide marks to help me put it together. I can use a heat gun to start the curve shape on the foam. I'm using a bell of a punch bowl ladle that I got from the dollar store as a form to help with the curves. Now there's a big panel line that runs down the center of the back of the shell, so I cut out a trench for that center line, and after I glue them together, I can add a little strip of 2mm craft foam that'll hide all my cut marks. As I glue the foam together with contact cement, I make sure I line up those pattern guides, and I keep the surface of the seams flat. Since I cut all of my parts from different scraps of EVA format foam, they have slightly different thicknesses, and I want the uneven seams on the inside. When all the parts are glued together, the tension on the foam opens the shell wider, but once it's glued to the underside of the device, the foam will be pulled into the correct shape. Next, I start to take measurements from the toy to make the body of the device. Now, I could do this from a full-size printout of a picture of the device, but I've got the toy right here. Now I'm going to start on the back where the grip is and work my way forward. The chamber is not a true round tube, it's more of an oval. And after cutting an 18-inch strip to be the right size, which is an oval that's about 6 inches tall and about 5 inches wide, I can freehand a handle shape into some 1/2-inch plywood, and then I'll cut that out on a bandsaw. This is how the device will be held, possibly all day, so it needs to be strong enough to handle it. So I did a little bit of sanding and I basically got the handle to what I want. What I really want to do with the portal gun is make it light up. Now I know the actual portal gun lights up, makes sound, and changes color. I'm not going to try and do all that. All I wanted to do is just light up blue when I pulled the trigger. So for a trigger, I'm going to use the same switch that comes in the Nintendo Zapper. Now I didn't want to tear any more of those up like I did for the Rick and Morty portal gun, so instead I have some surplus ones I bought off eBay. After I test my wiring that the LEDs light up, I'm good to go. I solder the wires to the switch and cut out a place for it to go on the wood handle. I also use a Dremel to make a path for the wires to be, and I glue everything together with wooden coffee stir sticks and wood glue. And I was careful not to get glue inside the switch. I draft up a foam core template for the inside shape of the main chamber. I check the fit and then trace that onto plywood. Then I can attach the oval to the grip, pre-drilling the wood to prevent it from splitting, and add some glue to be sure. I also drilled a hole for the wires to pass through. Then I centered the oval in the main chamber ring and hot glued it in place. Then I went ahead and glued the foam core piece in as well. I make a smaller ring between the main chamber and the grip, and I add some 2mm foam to the rings to add extra panels. I wrap all of the exposed wood with 5mm and 2mm foam, and then I use a Dremel to shape the handle. I make a foam box inside the ring. This will give me a place for the battery pack to live, and by putting it here, I can get to the batteries and change them out later. I measure and cut a piece of foam for the underside of the barrel, cutting a notch to fit around the wood grip, and I add more foam to continue the main housing. This will be where the LEDs will go. I've got my switch, I've got my batteries. What I need to do is make the light. In fact, with the portal gun, there's a whole clear barrel in the front here. And of course that is what lights up. And what I thought about using was a smart water bottle. Seems to be about the right shape, it's too wide. So I looked around and I found the store brand of sparkling water. This has got the exact same shape as Smart Water, but it's only 7.5 inches around, and the label's very easy to remove. It's got a little tiny bit of glue on the bottom. I'll just put that down on the gun, it'll all be good. Now for the core, in the center, the part that actually lights up, what I'm going to use is a piece of polycarbonate tube. This is actually a little bit left over from the lightsaber blades I've made for Beyond Geek. I've got plenty of these scraps, I'm just going to use it. After emptying the bottle, I cut the top off and make the foam rings that need to go inside. I use black 5mm craft foam for everything that you can see, because once this is all glued together, there'll be no way to paint these parts. I also superglue the rings to the polycarbonate tube and then put it all together. To diffuse the light inside the polycarbonate tube, I roll up a piece of clear gift wrap plastic and put it inside. You wouldn't be able to see the light in the tube without this. The LEDs are white and I need them to be blue. I just looked around the shop and found packages of screws which are a transparent blue plastic. So I cut a piece out and glued it between pieces of foam and the LED holder from the flashlight. Later on, I found the blue painter's tape would have worked as well. Wiring up the LEDs is easy. The circuit board is arranged like a ring, and the outside is negative and the center is positive. I solder the wires to the LEDs and test the connection. Now to connect all the wires inside the device. I should have left the top piece of foam off for this, as it was a pain working around it. I made sure to add heat shrink tubing to cover all my connections and prevent a short circuit, because I plan to glue this all together and I don't want to cut it open again later. I have extra connections for the top light, which is a little LED headlamp. I solder the wires so I bypass the switch in the circuit board and everything lights up when the trigger is pulled. I cut a hole for the round light that is on the top of the device, and the water bottle cap is nearly the perfect size. I add more blue package to tint these LEDs, and I'll glue it in place later. I support these LEDs with more foam, and I line the underbarrel piece with 2mm craft foam to hide the texture. I cut more rings of foam to hold the barrel in place. Now I didn't really measure these, they were just cut to fit. And I actually started to do that a lot for this build. I have plans and dimensions in the description, but there are some pieces you'll need to figure out for your own device. It's a portal gun. I cut even more rings to start the muzzle, adding strips to keep the barrel level. And for the actual muzzle, I'm going to use a piece of poster tube, cut to size, and lined with 2mm craft foam. I alternate the seams of the foam so that they are hidden when it's assembled. And then I finish building up the front barrel housing, getting it up to its thickest points. And now for the scariest part of the whole build. I need to taper the front part of the barrel. First, I cover everything that I don't want to accidentally sand with painter's tape. Now, a sander can still chew through the tape, but it'll prevent light scratches, especially on the water bottle. And I'm really worried about scratching the clear plastic, and it can stay on there to protect it from paint later. As carefully as I could, I used 220 grit sanding disc to bevel the barrel edges, and I tried not to hurt anything else. I even cut the edge off the disc so it wouldn't overhang and scratch the edges of anything. There's a hose attached to my sander that runs to my shop vac. This sucks up nearly all the sanding dust as I work. And I use a sanding block to fine-tune the shapes. I was really worried about the bottle, but the poster board worked, and it was fine in the end. There are recessed panels on the inside slope, so I freehand cut some 2mm foam to shape and then cut out the panels. It looks great after it's glued in place. I added some 5mm foam paneling and cut a circle to make a ring on the end of the muzzle. I cut two so I had a spare, because I wanted to add a bevel for this piece in the bench sander, and that could ruin foam in a hurry. I glued some 5mm foam to thicken the ring, and then cut out the center and bevel the inside with a Dremel and some sandpaper. The Dremel can quickly make divots in the foam because it likes to grab and grind in one spot, so it's almost harder to use than the bench sander. I had used some acrylic caulk to fill in the seams in the shell and sanded everything as smooth as I could get it. And I wanted to use my heat gun to go back and really smooth out the foam, but the heat gun opened up all the seams worse than when I started, so no heat gun's going to get used on this shell. The EVA foam is thicker than the edge of the shell, so I sanded all the edges of the foam to look thinner after it's assembled, and I sanded most of the texture off the front shell. It should be smooth on the inside. There are 3 bumps in the main shell where wires connect to the front claws. I cut pieces, I heat formed them, and add a flat front with 2mm foam. Then I cut the bases flat and glue them onto the shell. I add some pieces of foam to the main body so I can glue the shell onto it later, because it doesn't just glue right to the main chamber. Where I want to glue later, I tape it off because I want to add glued right to the foam and not onto paint. And I make a plug to protect the bottle inside of the muzzle. I superglued a stir stick into that plug, which will make it easier to remove later. I paint everything with plastidip paint, both black and white. I had sanded all the Sharpie marks off the shell as I was afraid the ink would bleed through the paint, and it does. The few marks that I missed on the front bled through later. Definitely remove Sharpie from foam before painting it with white plastidip. When plastidip dries, it's kind of a dull color, But plastidip makes a glossifier spray, which is great because the portal gun is all shiny and glossy in the first game. To make the front claws, I pulled the windshield wipers off my truck. I took the blades off, I cut them up with a Dremel, and superglued them into the claw shape. I added a screw in one place, but it was more of a pin to help hold things together with the glue than actually grabbing anything with the threads of the screw. There are wires that come off each claw back to the shell. I cut some scrap wire, cut up a drinking straw, and hot glued them together. I cut the wires long because I can trim them to fit later. Now that the plastidip is dry, I can paint that main panel line black with acrylic paint. Then I can remove the plug from the muzzle. I peel all the tape off and remove the poster board, and I was relieved to see that the water bottle was not hurt. I used the heat gun to form a point into the front shell, and I put a lot of contact cement on the barrel where I want the shell piece to go and gently put them together while it's still wet. This marks where the glue needs to go on the front shell piece. Then I repaint everything with new cement and carefully glue the shell to the barrel. I put some white 2mm craft foam around the bottle cap to fill the hole in the shell and check that my fit is what I want, and then I hot glue the bottle cap into the main chamber. By the way, I really like this black hot glue I got on Amazon. I mean, it's just hot glue, but it's solid black in color. I add one more piece to help hold the back shell on, and I glue the back shell on just like I did the front, and I pull the shell over the bottle cap to make sure it fits correctly. Since my claws are made of metal, they're easy to use to mark their placement in the foam, cut incisions with an X-Acto knife, and superglue them in place. I had painted the straws black and used a drill bit to make a hole for them. Then I hot glued them in place. Then I'll cut the wire to fit, use an X-Acto knife to make a little X to push it into, and superglue it in place. The portal gun has an Aperture Science logo on it, and I had a friend cut some from vinyl. The tiny logo was hard enough to do on a desktop vinyl cutter, but then the vinyl also doesn't want to stick to the plastidip. So I fight with each letter to get it in place, and then carefully cover them all with white glue to keep them attached. And a quick spray of glossifier will hide the dull white glue. Now I could have made the back of a different material. This could have been really smooth and shiny, and the claws in the front could have been articulated. But everything here I already had on hand. This was all made from scrap from previous projects. There's only one thing I actually purchased, a water bottle. This also gives it a big benefit of being a fraction of the weight of the official toy, so this would be very easy to carry around all day at a con. Now remember, there's many different ways that you can make something, but this is how Odin makes. I have a Patreon page where I'm giving away props that I've made right here in the show. Christopher Bailey won this month's prize, and he won the Wonder Woman shield for his daughter, Kayla. If you like the video or have ideas or something for me to make, please leave them in the comments below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.
Vital testing apparatus destroyed.